Legislative Day number 6 will now come to order. Please rise for a moment of silent meditation. I will now call upon Councilman Marks to introduce the Scout Troop who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Councilman Marks.
Thank you. If the Scouts from Troop 124 could come forward. Troop 124 is chartered to St. Isaac Jogues Catholic Church in Kearney. This is one of the largest troops in the Delaney District, and we're very honored to have all of you here today. Yes, it is. Yes, my son's here. Yes, glad to have you here. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much.
Troop for a while, right?
I just wanted to mention that my legislative aide, Jim Allman, was in this troop, who is also an Eagle Scout. And I think he lifeguarded some of these boys. And any of you guys recognize Mr. Allman sitting here in front? He's a lot shorter than you, isn't he?
His name is on the troop trailer. His name is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Your name is on the troop trailer? Oh. Stand up, Mr. Allman. Turn around. Say hi to your.
There you
go. Very nice.
Councilman Patoka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to take a moment of personal privilege for actually 2 points. One is I'd like to acknowledge my 8th grade social studies teacher who is here, Diane Gordy. Of course, we called her Mrs. Gordy back then, and was at Sudbrook Middle School, Sudbrook Junior High School, but she's awesome individual. Don't talk about my grades back then. But also a second point is this past Saturday night I was at the CQ Arena to watch the Pikesville girls team play in the 1A state championship against a team from Washington County. And it was a close game until halftime. They led at halftime by a few points, and then they went on to win the state championship by 30 points.
Whoa!
So I'm trying to get a copy of the coach's halftime speech because whatever he said to those young ladies really worked. And so just a big shout out, and I'm so proud of the Pikesville girls basketball team. Thank you.
Great. All right. Is there a motion to approve the journal for the meeting on March 4th, 2019?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
It's been a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
The journal is approved. Bill 1-19 was passed by the council, signed by the executive, and is hereby enrolled. Mr. Secretary, will you now read all bills for introduction, please?
Mr. Chair, first bill is Bill 819, entitled Small Wireless Facility Design Guidelines. Bill 9-19, sponsored by Mr. Jones, Metropolitan District Review of Wastewater User Charges, Time for Request. Bill 1019, sponsored by Mr. Marks, Zoning Regulations, Downtown Towson District Signs.
Council will now consider all bills for final reading and vote. Mr. Secretary, first bill, please.
Bill 319, sponsored by the administration, County Charter Citizens Election Fund System.
And Mr. Field is here to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Bill 319 amends the Baltimore County Charter by authorizing the County Council to establish by law a system for public financing of elections for the County Council and the County Executive beginning with the general election in 2026. The bill, as I said, an amendment to the Charter requires 5 votes to pass, and if it does, it'll be placed on the ballot in 2020. Assuming it passes, we would likely draft a bill then in 2021, obviously in consultation with the Council. The bill, the bill and the law that would go into the charter has certain elements that are going to be required. It would allow candidates to decide whether they want to participate or not. It would establish a commission made up of members appointed by both the council and the executive that would recommend the total amount required to be put into the budget in the next fiscal year to fund the campaigns. This would be anticipated funding. It would require the executive to fully fund the fund each year pursuant to the recommendation of the commission, but it would authorize the county executive not to fund it if, one, we had to transfer money from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve account during the current fiscal year, which, as you know, is basically the rainy day fund for the county, or two, if the executive certifies to the council and the council agrees that the county's fiscal condition would make funding the fund imprudent. There are also a couple of amendments. I don't know if I should talk about them or if you want to.
What amendment?
There's one amendment or one set of amendments to the bill, yes, Mr. Chair.
I can talk about those?
Sure.
All right, so there is one set of amendments before you. The first one, the main one, is the amendment provides that we would establish within the fund a sub-fund within the system to which citizens may make voluntary contributions and from which the disbursements shall be made to a participating candidate's citizen-funded campaign account before disbursements are made from the fund receiving the appropriation. So in other words, we'd sort of spend down the voluntary fund that's created before we took money out of the fund that was sort of appropriated from taxpayer dollars, just like any normal appropriation. So that's the First Amendment. And then the second one is that the auditors spotted just a kind of a technical problem with that section about the Revenue Stabilization Reserve account, and they requested some clarification that that account is actually an account within the general fund, and so they just wanted to sort of clarify that because the way I had written the bill made it seem like it was outside the fund. So I want to thank the auditor for coming up with that change. That's the bill.
So, Mr. Secretary, is that two amendments, one technical and one substantive, or can we do both together?
You can do both of those at the same time.
All right. Well, before we get into questions and comments, why don't we vote on the amendments? I don't know if you want to read them again. It almost sounds like Mr. Field did your job for you.
On this one, yes, sir. So they're out there. So I think all you need is a motion and a second to consider the amendments.
It's been a motion. Is there a second on the amendments?
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any questions or comments on the amendments before we vote? All right, Mr. Secretary, please call a roll on the two amendments, one technical and one substantive.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
No.
Mr. Bevins?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins, sorry.
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
The amendment passes. All right, now why don't we open it up for questions and comments on Bill 3-19 as amended? Any comments or questions, Councilman Marks?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the administration's work on this. There's been a lot of debate on this. The one thing I would point out is this is not a partisan issue. There are Republican and Democratic jurisdictions that have this type of system. There are variations in place in Arizona, Connecticut, Florida, Maryland, Vermont, certainly a fair number of states with different political diversities. And in fact, the first proposal for public financing was proposed by President Theodore Roosevelt in his 1906 State of the Union address. The one thing I will bring up that I mentioned in the work session is that I really think that this should be in place for 2022, not 2026 if at all possible. We redistrict in the summer of 2021. Hopefully we can get this in place for then.
Well, currently, you'd have to amend it because currently the section does say 2026. And I think I would point out, though, that if you, first of all, we're following the way Howard County did it as well, which was that it was, I had all the dates here, I brought them because I was trying to be prepared. They did this in 2016, but they did it for, the first election that they planned to do it for was not the 2018 election, but the 2022 election. And I think that some of the reason for it is that by 2022, we're actually in the middle of the election cycle. By 2020, when this passes, we're actually currently in the 2022 election cycle, and so you may already have people who have created campaign accounts who've collected money above the threshold that you're likely to allow in the bill that you're going to pass, because remember that what happens is that you can only have contributions at a certain limit. So you're talking about potentially, it's kind of an interesting idea, but you're talking about putting this into place while we're already in the middle of an election cycle. And I'm a little worried about unintended consequences from that, given the fact that there might already be people who've set up campaigns, I don't know, to run for local office who've already done things that will be, starting in 2021, potential violations of this. And so I think that the philosophy typically has been to sort of have all this in place so that you have a clean election cycle for everybody, which is what would happen if you waited until the 2026 election cycle. So that's, I mean, I would just be a little concerned about that. I can't think of all the unintended consequences of doing it early, but I have some concerns that you might have some. But currently, I mean, you actually have to amend the bill, though, because the charter amendment that's here specifically says 2026.
I just think that's probably overly conservative. I don't know of any candidates that are out there right now actively fundraising for 2022. We don't even know what the lines are going to look like.
Yes, there are.
There are?
Sure.
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think, well, I just think 7 years is a long time to wait. It's a long time to wait for this to be put in place.
It's the first time I've ever been accused of being overly conservative.
Well, that's good. But that's good for you to be able to.
Well, other comments or thoughts on Councilman Marks's question from the members? Councilman Katz?
Yeah, I agree. I think that 2026 is the correct time to start it because really the election cycle starts right after the last general election. So, people who are interested in taking advantage of public financing, they're kind of in limbo now. If they want to use it in 2022, what are they going to do? If they raise money and it's, more than the matching is allowed, are they going to be giving the money back? So I think it just brings confusion. And I mean, I wish it could be 2022 as well, but I think technically it's not going to work.
I think also, and remember also that with the Howard County law, I forget, you had to raise money from a certain number of people as well, again, if we're going to follow the model. And so I think it would be kind of an awkward bill draft to say in 2021, when we're likely to be drafting this bill, assuming the council wants to, right? That's another story, how long that's going to take for that bill to be drafted, whether or not you're talking about donations that come in after the effective date of that bill, and then what happens with the ones that came in before that. And so I think that's probably why, again, I don't know what Montgomery did because I was really looking at Howard when we were drafting this thing, but probably why Howard just decided to just sort of do a clean bill and just have a full election cycle under it without any doubt.
So if we were to do an amendment, it would be a simple majority, right, for the amendment?
An amendment to the bill?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
I'm
The
curious
bill
what
would still have
everyone
to
else-
pass by 5 votes, but
Okay, I'm curious what everyone else thinks.
Are you offering a motion, or do you want to just?
I want to see where everyone else is.
I mean, I did want to say, Mr. Field, something that the Secretary and I were talking about, and you briefly touched base on, is just making sure that this is offered to legitimate candidates. I know Howard County looked at different things, like you have to have X amount of donations, maybe $25 by 100 different people, or aggregate of 10,000. But it is noted that those are type of things that we will work on by statute versus this bill. So I just wanted to point that out.
obviously, they'd have to see what to do, but this thing is drafted very broadly that there'll be a lot of power in the actual legislation if the time comes.
I'm not
Okay. Other questions or comments? Councilman Patoka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to speak to the merits of this bill. Running for office was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. Not the most difficult, but certainly one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And so I feel like if this bill encourages someone who may not think that they would be a strong candidate, even though they have the skill set, but may not run because of all of the pieces of a campaign that you have to put together. If this makes them feel like they have an edge to run and be a good candidate and creates a path, I think that's good for the county. I think creating multiple paths for someone to seek elected office is good. I think it also adds to having the diversity of the elected body reflect the county. So, for example, I don't know the exact number, but I would assume that perhaps 50% of Baltimore County residents are women. And on our elected body here, we have 14% of the county council.
That equals 1.
That equals 1.
It sounds better than it is.
So yes, Councilwoman Bevins, it's 1, and it's not reflective of the county. And so I feel like if if this bill does just push someone that would be a great candidate, but has a little difficulty putting all the parts together to take that leap, and it's a commitment, as we all know, it's a commitment that consumes all of your time, and fundraising is part of it. And I think if this helps ease the burden to someone that might be a spectacular council member, I've thought about this long and hard, and I fully support it.
Other questions or comments? Councilwoman Bevins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have a few comments. When the Citizens Election Fund System came in front of me, I've had, I guess, many emotions about this piece of legislation. I put myself in the place of the residents, you, the taxpayer, and think, is that the best way that we use taxpayers' dollars? I have so many needs in my district, and I know each one of us have needs in our district, whether it's schools, roads, community centers, just speed humps in general. And I know there are many things that I would like to have done. So when you talk about taking your taxpayer dollars and then funding for a campaign, I was really torn about that. And of course, it's really not about the way I feel, because I represent 125,000 constituents. So I've heard from all my constituents, and I've heard from both sides. And I agree, I guess, with most of what Councilman Batoka has said. I think that if you're a quality candidate, you're going to run no matter what. And campaigning is hard. It's very hard. It's hard to get here, and then the job gets really hard once you get here. So I've been torn about the bill and had to talk to a lot of different people. I am going to support the bill, and I'm going to support the bill because we're not making a decision here on whether these dollars are used today. We're making a decision today whether it's going to go before the taxpayers on a referendum on the next ballot when you vote, I guess, for the president in the next election. So I think you, the voters, will decide whether you want your tax dollars used this way or not. So that's how I've made my decision.
Other questions or comments from the council? Councilman Jones?
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to just congratulate all of my colleagues for the debate and all the hard work that you put in to come to your conclusions or come to your resolution. Also want to thank the county executive for proposing an amendment that will make it a little more palatable in terms of giving citizens an opportunity to participate in the voluntary fund first. That being said, I have given this a tremendous amount of weight, and unfortunately, as long as there's a tax dollar being proposed, I cannot support the bill. And I come to this decision because, having sat in this seat for the last 5 years or 4 years going on 5, I have seen the need in my community. Every day I go past school children walking in the street going to school, and we don't have sidewalks. I have seen people on Windsor Mill Road, 2 people get killed because we don't have sidewalks. And even though we receive funding for that project is funded every off year. So instead of that being done in 5 years, it's probably going to take 8 years. So I see the tremendous need in our community, and I guess find it very difficult to earmark whether it be $4 million or $2 million. I mean, 16 years, that's an elementary school. That's our share of an elementary school. That's $16 million. And when it's all said and done, this is one of those things that people feel good about. I mean, I can respect that it may encourage somebody to run. I can respect that it may ease their burden. But for me, the real question is, what does the citizens get out of it? I understand the candidate who burden has been lifted, but what does the citizens get out of it? At the end of the day, we could spend up to $4 million, and the citizens will not have not one bench, not one speed hump, not one thing out of it. So for me, I guess, find it rather easy, especially when I think about our current situation. There's a saying that goes, when you're in a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. Well, if we have an $81 million deficit and we have tremendous needs in the county, this is anything but stop digging. This is fast forward on the digging. The second reason why I have issues with this is because, number one, we can't afford it. But number two, the question becomes, is this an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars? Is it an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars? What does the general public at large get from this? We know what the candidates will get, but what does the public get? Will they get one bench? Will they get one speed hump? Will they get another school lunch for a kid? Will they get free tuition for someone to attend the community college? And make no mistake about it, there's a point at which we run out of money and we have to say no. We've just moved that point $4 million back in the other direction. So there's a lot more no's that's going to appear. No matter what it is, we're going to have to say no to some of those things because we simply won't have the money. So the question for me is this a priority? Is this a priority for the citizens of Baltimore County? I believe if people believe that the citizens want to do it, then so be it. Let them fund it. But the notion that if they don't fund it, then we go back to taxpayer dollars, that's the bridge for me that's too far. So one of the other reasons is, I heard on the news today, they said, well, the goal was to take big money out of politics. Well, the only thing this will do was increase money into the process. Because those that do not accept the public funds, they will ante up. They will get that much more. And when you look at what happened in Montgomery County, you look at how they did this, for 4 at-large seats, there was 20 candidates, all accepted public funding. There was 30, but there ended up being 20 candidates. Then at the end of the day, 3 of the 4 that won accepted public funding, and they had the help of super PACs. They had the help of other outside entities. This bill doesn't take anything away from anybody. It doesn't preclude anybody from doing anything other than adding more funds into the process, taxpayer dollars. So for me, with all due respect and indifference to all my colleagues, which I know you've come to this conclusion very carefully, me, I just can't do it because I see the need too great in my community. And when the day comes that we fulfilled all of those obligations, then I'll be willing to look at something like this. But until that time, I'm a no.
Other questions or comments from the council? Councilman Patoka?
Just want to thank Councilman Jones for how you went your thinking process on this. I think this wasn't a cavalier thought process. It was very thoughtful, and I appreciate it. Even though we may vote differently on this, I respect the things that you've said.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve Bill 3-19 as amended?
Amendment.
sorry?
We didn't vote on the amendment, did we?
What amendment?
Yeah, we
Oh, we did vote on the amendment, I'm sorry.
You were there, you were there.
Yeah. So is there a motion to approve Bill 3-19 as amended?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Bill 3-19 as amended. Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Nay?
Mr. Crandall?
No.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Bill 3-19 as amended is passed. Mr. Secretary, next bill, please.
Mr. Chair, next bill is Bill 4-19, Baltimore County Ethics Law Amendments.
And Mr. Field.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Bill 419 makes a series of changes to the ethics law. I'm just going to try to go through them. Initially, it greatly expands the number of people who must complete the ethics training and complete financial disclosure statements. The council will recall that when you passed the bill a couple years ago with the ethics training, you sort of kept it at a fairly high level, and now we're proposing that it go down a little bit further in the ranks to other level, to other fairly high level managers whose duties and responsibilities are likely to substantially affect private interests. So that's the first thing the bill does. Sort of a technical thing, there's a thing in the current law that requires us to do a live ethics training for lobbyists once a year. We propose to move it from January to March initially, just because we start getting the forms in the beginning of January, so we want to push it back a little. But one of the things that the bill does is the law had already, if you recall, authorized the commission to do this online, to do an online training, which other counties do and the state does. And so one of the things that we propose is that if we eventually do create an online training, that we get rid of that required live training for lobbyists and people can just do it online that way. And then I just said, the only other thing is that we do is, we probably already have the authority, but we stress it here in the bill. It gives the commission the authority to allow for online filing of financial disclosure statements, which is what happens at the state level, and also lobbying statements as well. I mean, you guys are probably in the middle right now filling out your financial disclosure statements in paper, and so long term it would be nice to head into the 21st century and do it online. So we're just explicitly giving the authority to do that. There's a provision in there that, I think I mentioned this before, we're changing the definition of lobbying, but not terribly significantly. It's not changing a lot, but what we're doing, just to sort of get out of a little bit of confusion that we've had that actually was highlighted by the training, is that we're just adopting wholesale the definitions of lobbying and lobbyists that are in the suggested model law that the State Ethics Commission produced for large counties. And so I basically just copied that. And the changes aren't hugely significant, except that under current law, there's a slight distinction between the amount of money that you have to have basically spent to determine whether or not you need to register as a lobbyist for executive action as opposed to legislative action. And we're just flattening that completely, that if you're taking in $500 in compensation, then you have to register as a lobbyist. If you're spending over $100 in expenses for influencing legislative or executive action, then you may have to register as a lobbyist, unless you fall under one of the many exceptions that exist there. The bill requires the posting of lobbying forms online. As you know, we collect lobbying registrations and then annual reports. Again, you can typically go to the state's website and get all this, and so we're going to, again, assuming the bill passes, we'll post all that stuff online. And then finally, there's a bit of a new revolving door prohibition that applies only to the county administrative officer and department heads who leave county service after the effective date of the act. They will not be allowed to be involved in any case or contract involving the county for 1 year after leaving county government. But again, it only applies to people who leave after the effective date of the act. And those are just all the changes that we're proposing.
And there are no amendments of Bill 4-19. So are there any questions or comments from the members to Mr. Field or to the administration? Yeah, Bill 4-19, I think, was kind of wide consensus. I didn't see any concerns or issues from any of the members. So saying that, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Bill 4-19.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Bill 4-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next bill, please.
Bill 5-19, the Office of Ethics and Accountability.
Mr. Field.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening once again to the members of the County Council. So, Bill 5-19 proposes to establish a new Office of Ethics and Accountability. This is effectively an Inspector General, they're called in a lot of other counties. The basic task of the Office of Ethics and Accountability will be, generally speaking, to investigate fraud, abuse, and illegal acts in the county government, as well as find ways to promote efficiency and accountability and the integrity of the county government. It will actually be, it's proposed to have kind of a separate budget item so that the office is independent of both the executive and the legislative branches for the most part. The anticipation is that there will be a staff, at least at this point, of 2, including an executive director and probably a secretary. The office will also provide staff support to the Ethics Commission. Currently, the Ethics Commission is housed in the Office of Law, and the bill proposes to move the Ethics Commission out of the Office of Law and into as part of the Office of Ethics and Accountability. There's a pretty specific section about what they'll do. They'll evaluate and investigate activities. They'll conduct criminal, civil, and administrative investigations, and providing information and evidence to others about such. They can initiate reviews of county operations, receive investigate complaints from any source. It's hoped that they will work closely with the auditor's office, and I believe that we just determined that is what happens in other jurisdictions that have this. They'll issue reports and just basically do the kinds of things that the Office of Ethics and Accountability will do. There's an interesting provision at the end about how their work will also be reviewed approximately every 3 to 5 years for some kind of quality review. There'll be some review of what this office does. And that's pretty much it.
And Mr. Secretary, I understand there's 2 different sets of amendments.
There are, Mr. Chairman. The first set of amendments in your books is offered by Councilman Jones. This is somewhat of a technical amendment. On page 11 of the bill, lines 13 to 15, it states that the executive director shall report the findings of the office's work to appropriate elected and appointed leadership and to the public. This amendment would explicitly indicate that the office's work to the findings of the office's work to appropriate elected and appointed leadership would include the county executive and the county council.
Any questions or comments on that amendment?
No, just a little clarification. Before it was somewhat vague in the sense that you would have to assume who they were talking about, and I guess thought it was necessary to button it down and make it clear.
Any other questions or comments on this amendment? All right, so is there a motion to approve this first set of this amendment to Bill 5-19?
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on this amendment to Bill 5-19.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
The amendment passes. And then, Mr. Secretary, let's do the second set of amendments, please.
The second set of amendments deals mostly, there are several amendments within that amendment. The first is to make the first term of the executive director of the new office a 5-year term, and then each subsequent term shall be 4 years. The reason for that is Mr. Field and I found that it was best to have the term of the director end mid-term of the county council and the county executive. And in order to do that, the first term would have to be 5 years, assuming that this person, if the bill passes, is hired in the near future. And then every term thereafter would be 4 years, again, so it's consistently in the middle of every subsequent term of the council and the executive. The second amendment deals with the subpoena power of this new office and indicates that the office may issue a subpoena to compel compliance with a request issued under the bill under this new office if the recipient of the request, whether that be a person or an agency, has not complied with the request within 90 days after such request, and also indicates that the subpoena issued by the office may be judicially enforced. And then the third amendment deals with, on page 12, in line 12,
Line 2.
that states that a copy of the written report resulting from the review of this new office shall be furnished to the county executive and the county council and to the public. It includes language that would say a copy of the written report resulting from this review. Wait a minute, am I in the right?
Line 2.
I'm sorry, it's line 2. The report shall list the accomplishments of the Office of Ethics and Accountability, and the new language adds, including any monetary savings attributable to the work of the office, and shall be provided to the county executive and the secretary of the council. So it just adds a component to the reporting that includes statements or indications of what monetary savings this new office is gaining through its work. So those are the 3 amendments.
Questions or comments? Councilman Crandall?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Field, Mr. Bostwick, in the course of studying this bill, a question had come up, which is, does the county have the authority to grant subpoena power to an agency or a department?
Yes, it's
We
in
do.
the charter. There's a provision of the charter that authorizes us by legislative act to grant subpoena power. And actually, some of this language was copied from subpoena power that the Ethics Commission already has.
I think it's section 1008 of the charter.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Couch?
Does our council audit office have subpoena power?
Yes.
And we can go to court to enforce it?
Yes.
So if there is a governmental agency that will not provide information that the audit office needs, that the audit office has the subpoena power and it can be enforced through the courts?
I believe so, yes.
Well, that would be true with this bill. I don't know, we've
Well,
never tested it.
Right. I don't think, section 1008 specifically states the county council, the county executive, the county administrative officer, the Personnel and Salary Advisory Board, what you know as the PSAB, the County Board of Appeals, the county auditor, and such other officers or agencies of the county as may be so empowered by legislative act of the county council or otherwise by law shall have the power to administer oaths, compel the attendance of witnesses, and to require the production of records and other materials, that is subpoena power, in connection with any investigation, inquiry, or hearing authorized by this charter or by law.
So what recourse does the audit office have should someone refuse to testify or turn over information?
Well, the auditor is part of the legislative branch of government. The auditor can make requests for documents or oaths or things of that nature, and it would be, I think, up to the county council to determine how far they wanted that request to go.
So we could support taking it to court then?
When you say we,
You said the action of the council.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Evans?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a questions for the attorney. So this is just a big hypothetical question, I guess, because I want to have a total understanding of this, because I've been confused on some of these facts. So let's say there's been an ethics complaint about a staff member or a member of the county council or any staff. Would this person have the ability to walk into the office of OIT, it's not me, walk into the office of OIT and ask OIT to go into their emails, whether it's the staff or the council persons, without them being notified?
Which person are we talking about?
For any of, let's just use us as, since we're here, we'll
Right.
use the council. So any of our staff, our senior legislative aides, our interns, our personal emails, let's just say there's been a complaint put in.
Right.
And maybe they're looking for something.
I think that they would, it's kind of interesting.
I thought so too.
Right, no, I think from some case law that we've seen that actually wasn't really about this, there's good reason to believe actually that the IG is not going to have any greater authority than any other person would have under the Public Information Act. There's a case called Shropshire, which is typically cited for the proposition that the personnel records are subject to the personnel records exception of the Public Information Act, and that's usually comes up in the context of IA reports at the police department. But what I found interesting about the case was that it was actually the Montgomery County Inspector General who was asking for the personnel records, and the county attorney actually stood on the side of the IG and said, we think that these are investigatory records and the investigation is closed and they should be turned over. And the Court of Appeals said, no, they're personnel records, and because they're personnel records and it's not the person in interest asking for the record, they're not subject to disclosure to the IG. And so to go back to your question, the analysis would be the same. Currently, we get these requests all the time for emails. People can ask for emails under the Public Information Act, and we have, I'm finished, it's possible to disclose them, we apply the same analysis. If there's things in the emails that we're not allowed to disclose or that we can, as a discretionary matter, not disclose under the PIA, then we go through that whole analysis and we deny that. And so I think that the IG would be subject to the same issues.
Could it be done without a PIA? Would this agency have
Every
the authority
request-
to do that without a PIA? I guess that's my question.
I think that every request, based on the Shropshire case, I think that whether you call it a Public Information Act request or not, any request for records that exists is a Public Information Act request. We don't nickel and dime people to death when they come and they say,
Right.
I want to see a copy of these records, and we say, oh, well, you haven't said the magic word, but we write a letter back saying, well, we're treating this as a request for records under the Public Information Act. And just based on what I saw in this one case, I think that this person's going to have that level of power. So it probably ought to be done in writing. But
Mr. Field, isn't a PIA request different than subpoena for records? I mean, a subpoena is a powerful thing.
Right, and so what happens in the bill was that there was kind of a desire to not let this, to sort of create some delay in this. So the amendment provides that he or she has to wait 90 days for noncompliance before they do the subpoena, meaning giving some time to get some cooperation from the various agencies to get it. But remember, I also think that this will be used. This isn't just about getting records from the government. This may also be about getting records from contractors, right? I mean, we're also going to be looking. I mean, they'll have the ability to investigate the behavior of some contractors, and the Public Information Act doesn't apply there. It just applies to the government. I mean, it's not going to be easy. And obviously remember that the PIA is only about requesting records, but we do have law in here in this bill about also being able to talk to people, and there's going to be there's a requirement when the IG wants to talk to somebody that people are going to have to talk to the person. That's what the law currently says. So, and the PIA doesn't cover that at all. So, I mean, the intersection between all these laws is going to be kind of interesting, I think.
Thank you. I guess I was also curious about, it's not mandated, I don't believe, unless I missed it, that, will this person be an attorney?
No, what we put in the bill was, my bias.
I think they should be.
Right,
Just saying.
and so what we wrote into the bill was, where the heck was it? Pardon me? Page 5. All right, so it says, the executive director shall be professionally qualified by experience or education, in auditing, law, ethics, compliance, government operations, or financial management, and shall be selected solely on the basis of professional ability and personal integrity without regard to political affiliation. So it could be a lawyer, it doesn't necessarily have to be. But the person's going to have to be a pretty high-level, smart person.
Well, who
in my opinion.
Who will be feeding them the information of what's legal and what's not legal if they're going to be independent of the executive office? And the council members, they won't be talking to our lawyers, and they better not be talking to you. So who will they be talking to?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, what I would probably, this is sort of interesting. If you read the charter, I actually am counsel to every board and commission and every body in the county government. We do have, as you know, the authority to hire outside counsel under certain circumstances, and so it may be that the executive director will decide that he'd like to have some kind of on-call outside, he or she would like to have some kind of on-call outside counsel for certain circumstances. And you see this in a few places where where there's counsel who's sort of there on a very limited basis for certain things. So that's always a possibility. You'll recall that we changed some law about a year ago about hiring outside counsel for the Ethics Commission. So it's not an unheard of thing to do, and you're not talking about someone who's, $150,000 a year salary for someone sitting there all day long, but just to be consulted on certain circumstances. And that happens in some places.
So the current commission that we have will be dismantled, that will no longer
No,
exist?
the commission will still exist. Their administration will just move from the Office of Law to this office.
To that office.
So what happens right now is that I assign one of my lawyers as counsel to the commission, just like I was before I became county attorney, and my secretary is actually also the administrative person for the commission. So I mean,
Okay.
you all have gotten, when you get those emails from the Ethics Commission, it's really Ashley from my office who's sending them. And so the thinking here is just that it will move out of the Office of Law and over there, into this office, and they'll just handle the administrative stuff.
Would you happen to know the amount of complaints that have been brought forth to the commission, let's say in the last, let's just go over the last 4 years? And how many had
It's
any
very
merit?
few. We had 4 in the last year and only 8 requests for advisory opinions. We don't get a lot of complaints.
So why would we be funding a new office at $200,000
Well,
a year?
remember that the mandate of this office is going to be broader than just the Ethics Commission's mandate, right? The Ethics Commission, we've been talking about this, right? So the county ethics law is really there to do 2 things. One is it's there to regulate lobbyists, obviously. And then the second thing, I always put it this way, it's sort of to prevent us county employees from using our vaunted positions to enrich ourselves and our friends. That's ultimately what it boils down to.
Right.
But the mandate of this, there could be violations and problems that are still not of other laws, like the procurement law or something like that would not come before the Ethics Commission. And it's funny, that you asked, one of the things that happens with the Ethics Commission is that they do get complaints fairly regularly about, what someone perceives of as bad behavior, but it
Right.
doesn't really fall within the 4 squares of the ethics law. And it's not really under their jurisdiction, and
Right.
they'll dismiss the complaint. And there are times when, they think, well, this does really sound not a great thing,
Right.
but they don't have the authority to do it. So, ethics will be kind of a subcategory of what they're doing, and but the mandate will be a bit broader.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bevins,
Yes.
just one thing to add. When we did the note for this bill, we looked at the Prince George's County legislation, which created their Office of Ethics and Accountability in 2012. Since the structure and responsibilities and authorities are very similar to this bill,
I copied it. I'm not that smart, so I copied somebody else's law.
And that office has published an annual report from 2014 to the present. And one thing that was interesting was the Prince George's County office reports that the number of cases it processed grew from 73 in FY 2014 to 459 in FY 2018. The method of case receipt changed mostly from email to an even split among web, email, and phone. It's also, I think, interesting that when they started, I think their budget was $350,000, and I think they had about 4 people, and their budget in FY19 is projected to be $854,000, and they will have 6 staff, including the director. So just some FYI.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
Councilman
Mr.
Crandall?
Chair, I mean, those numbers give me pause, and I did mention in the work session, how are we going to do it for 200 when Prince George's is doing it for 850? And the other trouble I have is if we have various agencies with subpoena power and an ethics commission, do we need to expand government into a whole new agency? Why don't we just restructure what the ethics commission, the law office, and the county auditor are doing? We already have the people, and they're already budgeted. So that's where I stand on this.
Other questions or comments? Councilman Catch?
Yes. When I look at this office, I think of the county government itself having an internal audit office that could possibly, for instance, on the state level, the Attorney General has an attorney in every department in state government, and they have internal auditors as well. Then the state legislature has an office of internal audit. So I see this, let's say that someone calls in and says, you know, I think that social services can do whatever this is in a more efficient and effective manner because this is what they're doing today, and I think this would work better. And then this office, Inspector General, could be looking into that issue and possibly saving the county money. So I think that this is a step in the right direction. Now, with an audit office or what do you call it, Inspector General, I know that when I was in an audit office, periodically we would, since the Board of Education's, I worked for their audit office. And whenever we had any questions, we would go to the Board of Education attorney for advice. Now, so under this circumstance, we would go to you, to your office for advice?
Well,
or-
I think it'll probably start off that way, but it wouldn't surprise me if, long-term there was, I mean, it would be good if the person was an attorney, but it may not be. But initially, like I said, the charter does provide that I'm counsel to all boards and commissions.
So for now, for this office, your office is available to give legal advice to the
Right.
Inspector
The
General.
difference, I think, would be, though, that right now, I sit in at the, we're there for the Ethics Commission when they're dealing with the complaints, which I
Right.
don't think is what would happen under this circumstance. I mean, I feel like we've done an honest job when we've sat
Yeah.
there, and I feel like, my office, I've been involved with ethics now for a good 20 years. I like to
Right.
believe I've done it with integrity, but, I think that role would probably be different. It would be just a matter of interpreting laws and things like that. Probably because I've written
So
most
what you
of
think
them.
is possibly in the future that this office may have its own independent attorney,
It might be possible.
is what you're
yeah.
saying?
Sure.
And,
yeah.
okay.
And it may, again, like I said, there are ways, because you're talking about limited amounts of time, to
Right.
have kind of outside counsel that you're not talking about tons of money that you're spending on. The election board has Drew Bailey. He doesn't cost them a lot of money, but he's there for their meetings, and he's there when something comes up, and sometimes there's a little bit of litigation, and he bills out a little bit more, and we pay it, and it's not a big deal. But I think that, Katie feels like she's got pretty good representation there with the lawyer that's really not costing us a whole lot of money. So, that model does exist, and it's not, it works well.
Mr. Field, I think when it comes to this new office, can you talk a little more about the ability to really dive into some of these contracts, some of which are tens of millions or lots and lots of money? How does that differ now versus what we have in place today?
Well, I mean, not exactly. I mean, right now, every contract that we have goes through a pretty sophisticated process that, that got set up a number of years ago. Lots of review from purchasing agents that work in the Office of Budget and Finance. Everything eventually is signed off by people in the Office of Law. Our signature goes on every contract, and the administrative officer, signs every contract too, which is an innovation from about 10 years ago. We do what we can to make sure that, obviously, the lawyers in my office spend a lot of time making sure that everything complies with all federal and county and state laws that we're required to comply with. That's in contract formation. Mr. Dorsey also has ways of looking into things when he's concerned about whether or not a contract has been complied with, and he gets involved in, he can talk more about that. This person is not going to be routinely looking into every contract. There'll be like we do with a lot of enforcement, responding to complaints and concerns. So, yeah, this, contracts are not going to go through this person. We're not going to be changing the purchasing process that we have now, which is already fairly comprehensive.
Can you tell me too, again, maybe reiterate how the county auditor office will work with this office?
I mean, I think that they'll work that out together. The auditor has the role that she has. They stay pretty busy from what I can see. So, I mean, they'll probably just try to work together and use their combined expertise and authority when they feel like there's something to dig into this stuff together. But, I mean, this is new for Baltimore County, so I can't really predict how it's going to work.
So the fraud line that the county auditor office has now, plus some of the maybe staff or budget, will also be migrate over to this new office?
Well, I don't think people are going to be lost. I just think it'll be, there's no intention of moving people over from the auditor's office, as far as I know. But I think that the idea is, I think that Ms. Smelkinson talked to the people in Prince George's, or somebody did, and discovered that there was a close relationship between the Office of Ethics and Accountability and the auditor's office, is what I heard, but I don't know.
I know we have other questions. Councilman Patoka?
Mr. Field, would this office, while it wouldn't review contracts that come before this council, would it review other contracts that are, I guess the best term I can think of is legacy contracts that don't come before this governing body?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, again, we're talking, I don't think we anticipate that it's going to do routine review of our contracts. It's going to respond to complaints, I would imagine, or if it's doing an audit of a particular problem or what it perceives to be a particular problem, it will look at those contracts. So, I mean, I'm not sure what legacy contracts are. I mean, you know that commodities contracts generally don't come in front of the council, so nothing would stop the auditor, this person, from looking at the commodities contracts or the kinds of contracts that don't come before the council. If that's what you're asking. I'm not sure what else we're talking about.
Well, they're just some contracts that inexplicably don't come before the council. And so I'm wondering if this office would review those contracts that inexplicably don't, it's a hard word to say, don't come before this council.
Right. I mean, I, again, like to believe that we comply with currently with the provisions of the charter and code that talk about which kind of contracts come before the council. Quite obviously, it seems to me that if somebody had a complaint and said, look, this was a services contract for, more than $25,000, or that was going to last more than 2 years, and it didn't, as required, come before the council, and it was entered into, then, I mean, I don't think anything, if someone made a complaint to this person would have the authority to come in and look at it. But they'd have to make the analysis that it was a violation of the charter. I mean, that's the analysis that they would do. I mean, again, I like to think that we bring that the administration brings the contracts to the council that the charter and the code require be brought before the council. Also, there's a purchasing manual, as you know, as well, and that, that we comply with all that. But I imagine that if you felt like there was a contract that should have come before that didn't, that's something that this person would have the ability to look into.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments on this amendment, on the second set of amendments? Anybody else?
Can I make a prediction, Mr. Chairman?
If
I suspect when you're a hammer, the world becomes a bunch of nails. And that would attest to, or probably explain why Prince George's County all of a sudden got an awful lot of more complaints. The other issue is, I guess, if that's your job, then you don't want to be sitting around doing nothing, so you track things down. The other part is, in terms of contracts, oftentimes we get phone calls from people who were not awarded contracts, and they make all sorts of accusations about why they were not awarded the contract. So I suspect they'll get a lot of those calls, too.
I don't doubt it.
Councilman Jones, I believe it was Ronald Reagan that said that government programs breed like rabbits.
Other questions or comments on this amendment? We're still talking about the amendment? Any other questions or comments? All right, is there a motion to approve this amendment to Bill 5-19?
So moved.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Mr. Secretary, let's call the roll on this amendment, please.
Mr. Quirk,
Aye.
Mr. Marks.
Aye.
Mr. Catch.
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins.
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Patoka.
Aye.
Mr. Crandall.
Aye.
This amendment passes. Now, are there any other questions or comments from the members on this bill 5-19 as amended? Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve Bill 5-19 as amended? I'll move it. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Bill 5-19 as amended.
Mr. Quirk.
Aye.
Mr. Catch.
Aye.
Mr. Crandall.
No.
Mrs. Bevins.
Aye.
Mr. Marks.
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Patoka.
Aye.
Bill 5-19 as amended is passed.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Yeah,
Councilman.
Yes, I would like to thank the county executive and members of this council for the way that this legislation was considered and discussed. I thought it was very impressive. This is major legislation, and I mean, it's reform legislation, and everyone concerned did put a lot of effort into it. It's my hope that when all is said and done and it's in effect, that we're going to have a more accountable government, one with openness, transparency. And I think that we're on the right road with these three bills. And I really appreciate your hard work and consideration.
Any other questions or comments before the fiscal matters? All right, the council will now consider all fiscal matters. Extensive testimony was taken at the council's work session on March 12th, 2019. The witnesses who testified at the work session are available to restate their testimony if needed. If a council member has any questions regarding a particular fiscal matter, that item will be discussed as a separate matter. I will now call upon the secretary to read the cover letter for fiscal matters 1 and 2.
Fiscal Matter 1 is a contract with Prologue Incorporated Targeted Case Management Services. Fiscal Matter 2 is a contract of sale with Northbrook Limited Liability Partnership, Wentworth Avenue and Cloister Road in the 21234 area zip code.
All right, are there any questions or comments from the members on either of these fiscal matters? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve fiscal matters 1 and 2? I'll move fiscal matters 1 and 2. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on fiscal matters 1 and 2.
Mr. Quirk.
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins.
Aye.
Mr. Catch. Mr. Patoka.
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Marks.
Aye.
Mr. Crandall.
Aye.
Fiscal matters 1 and 2 are approved. We will now consider miscellaneous business. Mr. Secretary, first item, please.
Mr. Chair, whenever a contract over $25,000 is awarded by a process other than formal competitive bid, notice of that contract must be given to the County Council at its next legislative session day following the award. There are 2 such contracts to be announced this evening. The first is with Verizon Maryland LLC, Verizon ANI Database Services 911 Center. That contract is in the amount of $861,150. And the second contract is Innoviz Incorporated Software InfoWorks Subscription and Maintenance. The total amount of that contract is $76,971.56.
Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Next item is the appointment or the confirmation of the nomination of Ms. Stacy L. Rogers to be the next County Administrative Officer, Mr. Chair.
And are there any questions or comments, Councilman Patoka?
Just want to encourage my colleagues here to support the appointment of Ms. Rogers, not just because she hails from the 2nd District, but because she's an outstanding professional in the field. She's thought of highly by the people that she's worked with, that she's worked for. and that have worked for her. And so I can't speak strongly enough to urge you to support Ms. Rogers' nomination.
Any other questions for Councilman Jones?
And notwithstanding the second district part, I will agree with everything you said. And we certainly support Ms. Rogers, and we're sure she's going to do well. So there's no doubt she has my 100% support.
Councilman Bevins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have really enjoyed, and I'm glad we've had the opportunity to have one-on-one with Ms. Rogers and really get to know her, not just her in a professional way, but on a personal level. And I'm really excited to welcome you to Baltimore County and look forward to welcoming you, and you will have my full support.
Councilman Crandall?
And I too enjoyed meeting you, Stacy, and I'll take a liberty of saying, welcome aboard. The only problem that we're going to have is your choice in support of, I can't even say their name, the football team that you support. So we'll have to work on you the next few years on that.
We're not going to talk about that, yeah.
Councilman Marks?
Well, thank you very much. I think it's great that Ms. Rogers has experience at the federal, state, and local levels of government. As I said at the work session, having myself served at all three levels, you gain an appreciation for how the local government is much less partisan and you produce much more tangible results. And I think you will enjoy working here. Congratulations and best wishes.
Councilman Katz?
Yes, I want to thank you for agreeing to take on this job. It's not that easy. I'm sure you know that. And your resume is very, very impressive. I'm very optimistic that you're going to do a great job. The only concern I do have is that you really do need to look at the 3rd district. It is the most beautiful district in Baltimore County. So if you're going to live anywhere, you want to live there. Okay? I'll take you on a tour.
You don't even have fields.
All righty. And then I guess I'll close by saying, Ms. Rogers, I think the council is very impressed. Many of us have talked to you individually. We all talked to you as a council. We had a good lunch and a lot of good questions and answers, and I was very impressed by the way you think about things. I was very impressed by your process, your deliberation, and I know we're all looking forward to you getting animal control under wraps. That would be just one wonderful thing. And then, of course, the rec councils and a lot of the work we heard today, and so many issues from the budget and from the time period that we're in. Lots of things to tackle, but I feel like you're going to be a really great county administrative officer, and I wish you the best of luck. And I definitely anything we can do, of course, to help, will definitely be there. So I will definitely move to approve your appointment. It's been a motion and a second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the appointment.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Katch?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks? Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
The appointment is confirmed. Congratulations, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Next item, Mr. Chair, is Resolution 27-19, sponsored by Mr. Marks. This is a request for a property tax refund of Leona Deal, who is entitled to a refund under a partial refund as a result of being a blind person.
I'm honored to move it.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 27-19.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Katch?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Resolution 27-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 28-19, sponsored by Mr. Jones. This is also a request for a property tax refund filed by Berkeley Hodges, who is entitled to a refund under state law as a result of being a disabled veteran.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 28-19.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye. What's your problem tonight?
Just council, council member Bevins. Resolution 28-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 29-19, sponsored by Mr. Jones, request for property tax refund from Kevin Timmons, who is entitled to a refund as a result of being a disabled veteran.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 29-19.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Resolution 29-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 30-19 is sponsored by Chairman Quirk. This is a request for property tax refund filed by Rohan R. Reed, who is entitled to a refund of property taxes paid under state law as a result of being a disabled veteran.
And I will move it. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 30-19.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Resolution 30-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 31-19, sponsored by Councilman Marks, is a request for property tax refund submitted by Stephanie L. Taylor, who is entitled to a refund of property taxes paid as a result of being a disabled veteran.
It's my honor to move it.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 31-19.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Resolution 31-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 32-19 is sponsored by Councilman Jones. This is a request for property tax refund filed by Tyrone R. Anderson, who is entitled to a refund of property taxes paid as a result of being a disabled veteran.
I'll move the resolution.
And I'll second it. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 32-19.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Resolution 32-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 33-19 is sponsored by Councilman Patoka. This is a request for property tax refund submitted by Shavar Stats, who is entitled to a refund as a result of being a disabled veteran.
Move to support.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 33-19.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Resolution 33-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 34-19 is sponsored by Councilman Quirk. This is a request for property tax refund submitted by Mark Wayne Radcliffe, who is entitled to a refund of property taxes paid as a result of being a disabled veteran.
I will move it.
Second.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 34-19.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Resolution 34-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 35-19 is sponsored by Councilman Jones. This is a request for property tax refund submitted by Clarence West, who is entitled to a refund of property taxes paid as a result of being a disabled veteran.
I'll move the resolution.
And I'll second it. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 35-19.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Resolution 35-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 36-19 is sponsored by Councilman Crandall. This is a request for property tax refund filed by a disabled veteran, Edward James Peters, who is entitled to a refund of property taxes paid under state law.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 36-19.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Resolution 36-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Resolution 37-19 is sponsored by Chairman Quirk. This is a request for property tax refund filed by a disabled veteran, James Andrew Helvig, who is entitled to a refund under state law.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 37-19.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Resolution 37-19 is passed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Next item is consideration of the reappointment of Matt D'Amico to the Baltimore County Design Review Panel.
Are there any questions or comments or any?
I'll move it.
Councilman Marks will move it.
Second.
And Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the reappointment.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
The reappointment is confirmed. Matt Tamika, he's not here, right?
I don't think so.
Okay. So the appointment is confirmed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Next item is also consideration of the appointment of Kelly W. Ennis to the Baltimore County Design Review Panel.
Is there any questions or comments from the council? Is there a motion to approve the appointment?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the appointment.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
The appointment is confirmed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Next is consideration by the council of the appointment of Joseph Usafero to the Baltimore County Design Review Panel.
Motion.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Any questions or comments? No. Hearing none. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the appointment.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
The appointment is confirmed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Next item is the reappointment, consideration by the council of the reappointment to the Baltimore County Design Review Panel of John DeMena.
Any questions or comments?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the reappointment.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Appointment is confirmed. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Consideration by the council of the appointment by the county executive to the Baltimore County Design Review Panel of Donald Kahn.
Motion.
Second.
Move in second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the appointment.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
The appointment is confirmed. And I did want to congratulate everybody for either your appointment or your reappointment. Mr. Secretary, next item, please.
Next item is Resolution 38-19, entitled Baltimore County Water Supply and Sewerage Plan Amendment, Cycle 36. This resolution is for introduction only this evening, Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Secretary, is there any farther business to come before the council?
There is no further business, Mr. Chair.
And is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. And as is customary, anyone who has signed up prior to the meeting with their secretary is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Secretary, are there any speakers signed up for this evening?
I believe there is one speaker, Mr. Chair.
And Gloria Kelly, is Gloria Kelly in the, okay. Good evening, Ms. Kelly. If you want to make your way up to the podium. And you have up to 3 minutes to speak. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your patience, too.
Good evening, Ms. Bevins and gentlemen. Good evening. Thank you for listening to me. I would like to propose that the county council propose a voluntary zoning procedure commission to study the way not the laws of the zoning commission, but the way code enforcement is carried out. Simple things like, I think the administrative law judge's time is way too precious to sit there and have hearings about John Brown didn't put his garbage can lid on. They ought to have some kind of citizens board to determine those types of simple cases. But where the major cases are, I think that the county council needs to commission a voluntary commission to study the way the code enforcement is applied, simply because there are many, many citizens that have issues that go up against big businesses, and because of the lack of the way the zoning procedures are applied, the code enforcement is applied, the citizen doesn't usually have any alternative or has a really tough road to hoe. So that is my request. And again, the other thing is, I think that they ought to have some type of citizens advisory just to get those little things, or some kind of panel or something to determine those little things that the administrative law judge doesn't have to deal with like barking dogs and things like of that nature. That they should be able to have ordinary citizens determine those types of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Could I ask a question before you?
Yes,
What neighborhood do you live in?
I live in Fullerton, Nottingham.
Fullerton? Okay, thank you.
She's in my district. Gloria's in my district.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Thank you for your patience, too.
Thanks, Ms. Kelly.
Absolutely, thank you, yeah.
Any other questions or comments or anything from the council before we all wrap up and drive home? All right. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate your patience. Thank you for your input, and you all have a please safe drive home. Thank you.